But I guess it's also for less important qualifiers, to be honest. This qualifier, pretty freaking important. It directly gets you into Katowice, which has even more prize pool, and yet is not the global finals, actually. Not anymore. That has moved over. Talk about that in a second, as we finally have our best of 5 ready to go, and an SCV is on the way. In the top right, it is GuMiHo for Cloud9. In the top left for Shopify Rebellion, she is Scarlett. He just defeated DRG. GuMiHo, he just defeated Cham. And GuMiHo getting the TvZ matchup to warm up on, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that the game versus Cham is gonna be massively different compared to the games versus Scarlett. And not only because GuMiHo is starting things off in this specified with a Proxy Rex, which actually is not too common for him, I would say. Doing it on Equilibrium is also a bit of an oddity, but it is also only 1 Rex, not 2 Rex. So Scarlett's Overlord's going to see this, but then what else? Just a Reaper? Then what happens? Might be a quick way to get multiple Reapers on the Zerg side of the map, followed up by Hellions, which are speedy. I don't think he's going to proxy the factory as well.
Game paused.
Oh, that's not a good sign. And the lack of explanation could mean that her keyboard just disconnected. Okay, there we go. Something. But still no explanation, just please pause. Well, now's a good time as any.
Game resumed.
I don't know what could have possibly happened there, actually. This is furthering the mystery of the 10-minute wait to even get this started. I have no idea. Anyway, while we do have some time, as this is not going to get super heated super quickly, Katowice has turned into just, you know, quote-unquote, just another tournament that can help lead into the global finals, which will be happening in the summer of next year. But it got more prize pool, and then had the option of having different players than you might have been expecting. Up until the most recent StarCraft announcements, Atlanta was the only tournament leading up to the global finals. So everything was going to be determined in this upcoming week, because Katowice was the global finals. But then things changed, as we got report of not just Katowice no longer being it, but then also DreamHack Dallas coming in for StarCraft, and the TBD global finals announcement to come for sometime in summer. So it might look really weird to see some of these players not at Katowice because they seem like they belong in the global finals, or they've done really well in their respective regions, just not top 1. But that is the way it goes. People who did win their regions are already in Katowice, so you had to win your region or get top 2 or whatever it was. So in this case, Scarlett was beat up by Estrella, and 2 times, actually. So Estrella, being both the winner of summer and winter regionals for the Americas, has now given a 4th spot to a yet-to-be-determined player. So it would usually be 3 players from the Americas server qualifier advancing to Katowice, and now it is 4. So, you know, whoever takes that 4th spot's gotta thank Estrella for that one. But it looks like it was kind of what I was talking about, like the forward Reaper position to get the Reapers lickety split on the other side of the map, but it's not into Hellions. It is into Cyclones, which are obviously capable of coming out much faster than their old counterparts, so they're not exactly like Hellions, but as far as keeping up the aggression, keeping up a good tempo, Cyclones actually now make sense more than being the Tech Lab produced, more expensive Cyclone that has more micro-ability, but hardly continues that type of fast-paced style of play. It's kind of more about getting those big kills like an individual Queen or a Spine, which, by the way, Scarlett did produce, wary of the follow-up here. She certainly didn't really need it for the Reapers, but the follow-up is what she's uncertain of, perhaps guessing that it is Cyclones and wanting that extra line of defense. If she gets to a Cyclones, she does not pull her Overlords back to particularly safe areas, but I guess there's only so many safe areas since the Medevac is with them. This is another reason why the Cyclone opener can be so good. I can actually go after the Overlords with the Medevac. The one Cyclone and one Medevac could also do the same thing, but Don't shut up. Don't worry about it. Point is, you can react to them out now. And that is still something GuMiHo is doing, also going into a Raven. So GuMiHo does be bringing out perhaps some more Mech in this best of 5. He was doing it in best of 3s earlier on today, as well as yesterday, or the day before, I should say, against a laser. So with the extra gases coming down also fairly quickly, I'm going to go ahead and call it. It's going to be Mech. Scarlett should be wary of the possibility. Not only is it something that more Terran players are experimenting with, it was also something that was doable even before the patch, and the person who would 100% be the one to do it, whether it was the old patch or a new patch, or just to experiment with it, or just to have fun with it, or just to show that he could do it, that would be GuMiHo. That is GuMiHo. He is the one that pushes Mech even when everyone else says that Mech isn't viable, and when everyone's like, yeah, I guess it's okay, then of course he's gonna do it. Now, Scarlett has not taken too much damage from the early Cyclone play, but 2 Overlords have gone down, handful of Lings, and thus far a perfect game on the side of the Terran. That always feels good, but, you know, it doesn't actually... It sounds better than it actually is. It just it sounds cool, but it's gonna get imperfect very soon. 6 Cyclones and 2 Ravens, actually, on the front lines. Makes things a little interesting. The amount of auto turrets coming down could be a doozy. That's a lot of firepower. And there they go. 1 Raven will get shot down. The other one will survive, but the auto turrets have helped out a little bit. I think their primary concern was helping to wash off the Lings, which they kind of did, but it looks like the Cyclones themselves just outnumbered the Zerg here and took down the Lings that Scarlett had produced on top of the Queen she had produced. 6 Queens going down to this attack. Scarlett also losing the Spine Crawler, but now flooding Lings forward. Should have enough to stop the, you know, pure Cyclone, basically, composition. But that really is unfortunate, because if Scarlett had been able to buy a little bit more time and had the Spine Crawler with the actual fight, it had 12 to 20 more Lings. I actually don't think it snowballs quite that much. But once the fodder is gone in the blink of an eye, those Queens will fall to the Cyclone lock-on. So that was the kind of, like, you know, your decision to take the battle now, or you wait a couple of seconds, and that also could have repercussions, so you go now, but actually maybe if you did wait, that would have been a little better. It's always hard to judge, but a lot of Queens did go down. GuMiHo supplied, doesn't look all that strong as of yet. His macro is yet again slipping. This was actually evident in his series versus a laser, and possibly one of the reasons that he ended up losing that series in the European Open qualifier. GuMiHo's macro is still probably some of the worst amongst the best Terrans in the world. So I say worst, of course, I mean still massively better than anyone in this chat right now, including myself. But compared to the likes of a Maru or a Clem, you're going to look back at his base during all of these hyper-intense micro moments, and you're going to notice more than a 400 mineral bank, which is kind of the acceptable amount, especially if you're about to slap down production. You're going to notice 600 minerals, 800 minerals, even 1,000 minerals, and that is just straight up a mistake. Also, not knowing that it is Mutas is unfortunate, but good news for Scarlett fans. She managed to have that Spire saved from a scout, well, because she took the fight on the front line, so that could have been another reason why she did so. The Mutas end up being a surprise, but they're only so effective. It's not like surprising a pure tank player or even an old Cyclone opener, because old Cyclone openers wouldn't have as many Cyclones, I would say. But this one has quite a few. So 10 Cyclones, able to also split up to protect the bases. Engineering base done, missile turrets are on the way, and the small amount of mutas that we see here are not going to do very much more. But Scarlett's given herself a lot of breathing room, so even though that fight with the Cyclones looked unfavorable for her, she is now able to basically explode in the macro. And that's something that she's pretty good at. When you give her 30 seconds, suddenly it's not just the drones that are higher numbers, the bases that are higher numbers, the queens that are higher numbers, but of course that creep spread that starts to feel actually really quite choking. You know, you're like, oh, it was only 30 seconds, so I'm gonna go back on the field. What the shit is all this? Like, what is that doing here? And we know that she's pretty good at that. So GuMiHo does get back on the map, feels safe enough at home, with Hellions being produced from a mech player and missile turrets for the mutas. I mean, usually Ling Muta doesn't get too many opportunities to run by. Scarlett could still force the issue, though, honestly, as there are not that many Hellions. Blue Flame is done, though. That's a lot of Cyclones. A Banshee had joined in at some point as well. The Lings do get a partial wraparound. No Lings! No upgrade, sorry, on the Lings, though, is a bit of a bummer. The Cyclones are starting to win out here. The auto turrets once again come in to help wash off the Lings from the Cyclones, and GuMiHo's attack once again perhaps catching Scarlett a little off guard. Because even though she is living, I will say that the Cyclones seem to always be just a little bit more than she expects. You know, it looks like she's gotten enough units, it looks like she's gotten a good enough surround or partial surround or what have you, and then it's just not enough. And perhaps the upgrade's really playing the part here. Because without a Carapace upgrade, those lanes are getting washed even better, even if there weren't that many Hellions. The Hydras are popping out, though, and in good enough number. I don't think that situation is going to happen again, necessarily. Scarlett also managed to, of course, get up to 5 bases, 87 drones, and a Hive. So even though she seems to be, maybe, like, you know, almost snowball allowing kind of situations on the front, she actually has so much going on the back end. She has a lot of macro being set up here. Still not that comfy bank that a Zerg would want. Nonetheless, more than keeping her head above water, I would say. GuMiHo has been doing an excellent job macroing. For the most part, I should say he's doing an excellent job expanding. Again, the macro might be a little questionable. Currently slapping down 2 starports, though. GuMiHo, one of the only players in the professional scene who eagerly, I should say, I guess, gets to battle cruisers. You know, some others will eventually admit that battle cruisers are the way to go. If they get to a 35-minute TVT, everyone's like, okay, I guess so. But GuMiHo will do it in TVP if the game kind of goes that way, and a really, like, set up defensively, very macro 5-base extraplanetary type of scenario. He'll do it in TvZ in a very similar scenario to that. And yeah, of course, they'll do it in TVT. But TvZ is the one that's a little bit surprising. But it's reactors, not tech labs, and still no fusion core either. I imagine that will come down, if not just for Liberator range. But first of all, we got our attack from Scarlett, finally getting the majority of her army on the other side of the field. Blinding Clouds came down. Anti-armor also came down, though, and those Hydras are extra vulnerable because of that, and they're getting slaughtered at this point. Initially, it looked like she was making headway, but with the tanks actually sieged and somewhat protected by the Cyclones, the more glass cannon composition of Scarlett did eventually get decimated. The Cyclones aren't usually the thing buffering between the Zerg and the tanks, but in that case, they were just enough. The Hellions helping to trickle in, and now the tanks are on the offensive, realizing they took a good enough fight that they can continue forward. Not a time for the Mech player to fall back and regroup, which would happen a lot of times with Mech. Nope, GuMiHo pushes the issue, now gets this high ground as well on top of the gold base, and Scarlett is some serious trouble. Trying to finish up some upgrades, trying to get her Vipers rejuiced, and damn, she's got quite a few of them. 6 of them. Not a whole lot of anti-air to work with either, and in so many Vipers, yeah, you can just abduct everything. Abduct the Cyclones, abduct the tanks, abduct whatever Vikings are going to be on the way. There are going to be Liberators coming in soon. Abduct those too. Hey, abducts are pretty good. They're actually kind of saving her life right now, but also GuMiHo not able to combine everything together. So the tanks now involved with the Cyclones are absolutely taking the fight. And once again, Scarlett overstaying her welcome to a surprising degree, but I guess you do have to remember that when even she recognizes, oh shit, I'm having trouble, it is difficult to retreat from this composition. The Hellions will chase down the Hydras, and the Cyclones will chase them down, even with their now limited range lock-on. And it just looks like GuMiHo is being able to play this game out to its end in his favor. Scarlett, I mean, she's had trouble. It's not been a very comfortable game for her. I would say that she managed to look graceful in her defeats, kind of like tripped over a banana peel, but then kind of like did like a little somersault out of it, you know, but it still was like, oh, well, that wasn't great. That wasn't a great start. But I think what happened was that she did get a little overeager on some of the pushes. Some of the pushes defensively were like, ooh, that almost got out of control, that almost snowballed, and then offensively, they definitely snowballed in the wrong direction. So, 40 supply difference against a Mech player who has equal upgrades. Doesn't look so great for Scarlett's first game on Equilibrium. Doesn't want to give up entirely yet. She does have these very powerful spellcasters. And we saw how powerful they can be given a little bit of time with all their abducts, but she's just had to give up 2 extra bases and now back on the original 4, which, I mean, at least she has the 4th being kind of, you know, good mining. GuMiHo's at 103 workers. Jesus. Oh, Duck's coming down on a very Hellbat-heavy army. So the Liberators and Cyclones got abducted, and the Hellbats just could not get into range, which they really shouldn't. I mean, the Hydras do have the range. They do have the mobility over the Hellbats. Hellions can be a different issue, but only in certain sizes. You know, if it's 6 Hellions versus 20 Hydras, of course the Hydras win. If it's 20 Hellions versus 6 Hydras, well, then yes, the Hellions will chase them down. So GuMiHo just with a little bit of a overemphasis on Hellbats and Hellions that they can easily happen, especially as they're the fastest things to reinforce and are still helpful. Even if they're not getting the connections, they are good fodder, they're good stopgaps, I guess, like literal physical barriers for the Hydras to get through. But he was missing the Cyclones, he was missing the tanks, he was missing a high number of Liberators. And it looks like Scarlett was certainly correct to try and stay in this game. She might have a second chance at life, but really behind all of this, can she do it? Can she regroup? Can she get another base up? GuMiHo's been getting so many bases. He's got the gold base, now turning into Orbital, funnily enough, but, you know, better late than never. Got the south base, got the north base as a planetary, might even be taking this middle 6 o'clock base. Exactly what GuMiHo is doing. Double upgrades are on the way, so +3 vehicles will finish up, and look at this, we do have the Fusion Core with Yamato, so even though GuMiHo wasn't getting there as quickly as I thought he might, he did go Liberator first, and Fusion Core for the range first as well. We do still have, I would say, a more eager Beaver Battlecruiser player showing their eagerness to get there. But I don't think they're going to get there, as the Cyclones come back in to balance the composition far better this time. Scarlett's army once again falls. And the Broodlords, which technically are plural, there's 2 of them, are not going to save the day. As these Vikings could also just lift again. There's not enough Corruptors. In fact, there's no Corruptors at this point. So the second chance at life was extremely, extremely brief. GuMiHo killing the Broodlords with Liberators. Ooch, ouchies. I like to see that. Hellions and Liberators trying to harass every which way that we look. Upgrades being denied. And at this point, I think I'm a little surprised that Scarlett's in the game. Might be a little frustrated with how this has gone. Sub 100 supply when you know you have done nothing to your opponent. Usually players admit defeat there. And there it is. GG's. So now we move on to hard lead for game 2. Top left, Scarlett's. Bottom right, up 1, it is GuMiHo. GuMiHo has played in every single qualifier. And I believe he's gotten to... I'm going to guess he got up to all 3 closed qualifiers. I can quickly check Asia. No, surprisingly. Oh, there he is. Oh, he lost that very early. He lost it versus SOS in the Asia qualifier. Alright, so yeah, GuMiHo has gotten to the closed qualifier in every single region. So in Asia, which would be like his home qualifier, right? He had to face so many other people who were very good. It's a surprising loss to SOS, because SOS isn't where it used to be, but then I also have talked about how I don't have a lot of faith in GuMiHo's TVP, so maybe I'm not surprised. And then he lost to Dark, which, you know, that's just going to happen. Then in Europe, I got to cast that. He did eventually lose out to a Laser, who was playing some of his best ZDT ever. But still couldn't beat Clem. And then he lost to someone else, I think, in the lower bracket. I just didn't see who. But anyway, this is absolutely not the single barracks proxy, so I should really wrap it up. This is absolutely the things are about to get charged up real quick. Like, the Overlord is going to scout this and should be scouting more than 1 barracks. It'd be very awkward if Scarlett saw 1 barracks and was like, oh, it's the same thing. Like, no, it is absolutely 3. And here's the really good thing too, is that 1 would not be believed, I think, in this scenario, in this location. So of course she's gonna scout 2. But sometimes that 3rd Rax tries to be hidden. So they underestimate how many Marines. And how many SCVs, actually. But in this case, GuMiHo did not care to try and hide that 3rd Rax. So Scarlett knows this is really dedicated. The 2 Rax, as Maru has showed us over the last 10 years, can kind of be macroed out of. Like, even if it doesn't do the most amazing job. The 3 Rax really has to do the damage it wants, which is basically kill the natural hatchery. And if it doesn't do that, the Terran should be in a lot of trouble. There's some other weird scenarios where 20 drones die to save the hatch, and that's also not good for the Zerg, but right, there's this one, which is Scarlett admitting that she can't defend the hatchery. She's going to go into the Roach play. She decided that very early on. Gas is already mining, and they're just going to break out. And the 3 Rax will have done the thing that it wanted, but it's still also so dedicated from the Terran that if Scarlett does a quick job of breaking out, then it might be a playable game. But losing the Queen in the natural off the bat and then having trouble in the main base is not the start that Scarlett was hoping for. This Queen mostly trying to buy time, keep the drones alive while the Roaches do continue building in that egg. Come on. Fry, damn it. There we go, finally pops out. Now, the Roaches themselves still won't be able to take on the bunker. They do have to turn into Ravagers, but getting the Marines off the main base was first the most important thing, and now, well, trying to save the hatchery would be fantastic. It just is not going to happen. And clearly, if Scarlett had been able to save that, she would have been much, much happier with things. Without the natural hatchery being saved, again, the Terran has done what they wanted. Should have a lead in this game. Does need to worry about the counterattack. That can get a little funky. GuMiHo is doubling down on the 3 racks too, so it's a different way of playing this out. I'm a little surprised that GuMiHo is doubling down, as in getting Marauders and Marauders slow. And I love the Reaper. I actually think it's quite cheeky to go into the main base and bother the drones. But I'm a little surprised he doesn't grab a second bunker, but that would have to do entirely with the amount of minerals available. Can't afford it. Now with the Marauders costing 100 minerals each instead of 50. So. And the repair also. Never forget taking minerals, taking a percentage of the building they are repairing. Stim is also on the way. It's not the most normal way to have this follow up, but I have absolutely seen this happen in TvZ. Scarlett also would have played against this, especially as she does face Beyond a fair few times. So she's going to try and basically choose the right moment to break out, right? Before the Terran army gets big enough to handle the Ravagers on their own. And that is a choice that she has made well so far. Marauder slow might be done, but the Marauders themselves also need to be worried about being focus fired, but they're going to be, oh, 3 shots! Ooh, that is a bummer, actually. 3 shotting the Marauders, now 4 or 5, whatever the hell it is. Not working so well for Scarlett. They both were focus firing each other, but GuMiHo still has that production, whereas Scarlett is later to it with the Roaches having to pop out from the main base after all. It does look like things will eventually be cleaned up, kind of, maybe, sort of, but then Scarlett having to produce more army as a Zerg player on one base. We know that sucks for a Zerg player in the way that their mechanics work. While the Terran might be pinching pennies as well, generally they get the benefit of these type of situations where you're both producing army and you're producing economy. Although, not really right now for GuMiHo. You're muling, I should say. You got mules being dropped down. There you go. 4 Marauders are still so freaking scary with that slow. They're about to have stim, and they are pretty chonky, so even though they won't recover their health from a stim, it might be worth it. In this case, not so much. 3 Marauders at a time still being produced, barely able to slip in that factory, and looks like a starport could be on the way. A starport will guarantee GuMiHo's defense back at home. If they can get 1 Banshee uncloaked, takes care of a world of Roach Ravager. But you do start to worry a little bit about now who gets the benefit of the minutes where nothing is happening. Scarlett has to be ever worried about the amount of Marauders that GuMiHo is actually building, but then GuMiHo can't really let up the pressure to try and build his own command center, because that's when Scarlett slips in those 8 extra drones and then gets back to building army. So, talked about kind of the Terran favoritism for their mechanical situation in one scenario, and then the Zergs benefit of mechanical situation in another. We do also have Ling speed over halfway done. Scarlett's going to have speedlings to actually get us around on these Marauders. But she has to be careful because Stim could still kill her entire army, and she must figure that Stim is done. Now, Terran commits this much to the production of the barracks. They must have been committing to all the upgrades, too. That is 11 Marauders. 2 medevacs! I said a Banshee because, you know, it's freaking 1 starport on 1 base. But no, 2 medevacs. This is turning into an actual bio army. At this point, I think GuMiHo is going to have to skedaddle. That surround of the Lings is looking fearsome, and the barracks are starting to burn thanks to the corrosive biles. Add in medevacs to this composition, and the Terran army generally wins. It does need to make sure not to get surrounded, and that is currently the rub. 2 medevacs about to appear. Those Marauders need to actually get into a little tucked-in scenario. Now GuMiHo realizing that the army did go across the map, now is totally ready to micro. And now is also going to lift and get into the main base. That's 5 Ravager. They'll break down the supply depots very, very quickly. But then actually going up a choke into the SCV pool as well. I don't know if that's going to be the play. Scarlett certainly thinks that it is. Behind this, she is droning. Can she overwhelm GuMiHo? That is a yes, as GuMiHo actually taps out. Kind of before the fight was actually determined, but saw the writing on the wall, I guess. Perhaps if GuMiHo had pulled back and built a bunker and had all of his units ready to go on the high ground, It would have been a different story, but still very odd. Because again, it would have pushed GuMiHo all the way back, and then his army would have been microable, but Scarlett would have had the chance to get those drones and get a superior economy, which was happening. A little funky way for that game to play out. So on the bottom right now, evening up the score, it is Scarlett. On the top left, it is GuMiHo. As I had mentioned briefly during the defense in the natural, Scarlett plays against that dedicated 3 racks, I think maybe not more than others, but perhaps publicly on big games. I feel like she has, as she does face beyond seemingly all tournaments, every tournament, and he does some cheeky proxies. GuMiHo's not usually the proxy guy, but there seems to be a certain day or best of in which he decides to be that guy. And then also trying to play off of the first game being a 1 racks and then turning into a 3 racks. That's clearly a very big difference. That could have tripped her up in some way. Obviously, if she didn't scout with the Overlord folding entirely, that could have been even worse. But that was a gutsy decision to go for the mass of units. Gutsy or natural, actually. It's kind of hard to say, because the natural fear for a Zerg player in that game would be that the Marauders, Wisdom, and Medivacs, I guess eventually, would have actually overwhelmed her. So in the classic kind of Zerg dilemma, if you make a bunch of units defensively, and you don't do anything with them, you just wasted time not building drones. So you do go for the attack if you think there might be an opportunity, and there clearly was. Kind of sizing up the situation as she gathered her forces around the barracks, then once realizing the barracks had to lift and leave, thinking, you know what, this could actually work out. Either way, it ended up being a very good call. Whether she knew that she would overpower the Terran even if they set up a bit defensively, or she just said, well, I have so many units, I gotta try this. Either way, it worked. And GuMiHo's gonna stop proxy raxing and go into the 1 racks expand. GuMiHo's first game was a proxy racks, but it was almost a... it wasn't a fake, it was combined a little bit with the tempo play. It was a tempo play, I guess. It was the proxy reapers to be a little more annoying than usual into the forwardly placed cyclone production, and then into the next cyclone attack and the next cyclone attack. So it worked out from minute 1 to 20, or however long that game lasted. But it did turn into a macro game. And so I was going to say that GuMiHo did win the macro game, and he looked really strong doing it, but it did start with the tempo boost in the beginning. Yflow, thank you for the 3 months. Reaper number 1, and only Reaper, went into Marine after. Not going to even delay the 3rd hatch. Scarlett slipped that drone out while the Reaper went into the main. The Scout's a fairly normal situation here. You know, the speed timing is always a nice thing to check if you can, whether or not it's already moving and grooving, whether or not the gas guys are still mining. To know maybe if you have a chance to, for instance, slip in the first 2 Hellions to go for a very quick attack on the drone line before speed is done. 3cc set up for GuMiHo. Still doesn't have a second gas. He's actually building it in the natural. I've seen a few mech players do this, but it is going to be stim. I don't know why I said mech players. You see Terrans do this. It is going to be stim. It is not going to be mech, even though that is what GuMiHo won in the first game with. And I do not believe this is a fake at all. This Overlord's not even close. What it is going to be, though, is pretty fast stim, you know, without a lot of units to work off of it. But then you can wait for combat shields. You can wait for your tech lab to produce factory to get a tech lab and produce tanks. And there you have the swap-offs. The swap-off singular. That's a starport on the way for GuMiHo. It's not usually the way you turn this into a 2-1-1. But different journey, same destination. Just enough units to fill up 2 medevacs, get the pressure applied. The Overlord of Scarlett should be able to kind of figure things out just off the front. The lack of supply depots is telling of a 3rd CC. 2 would already have to be done, and a 3rd is usually building on the front too if they're doing a very, very classic 2 base 1-1-1 into 3rd. And then if it was a Hellbat attack, there'd be so many more supply depots. So she should know, but that doesn't really give you the information as to whether it's a 2-on-1 follow-up or not. The number of Hellions is where that information might be coming in. Medevac's gonna reveal itself. It is only 1. swap off to a reactor. Still doesn't have enough Marines to fill up 2 medevacs anyway. But a medevac with Marines chasing out Overlords, dropping into the main, while the Hellions, which there are going to be 6. 2 just got produced. He's still producing from the factory in a reactor, actually. Could try and roasty-toasty up some drones. Now, this has also been kind of a newish thing, trying to make Hellbats your primary source of splash. I really liked them as a oddly powerful, but still kind of early 3-base attack that Time, now Olivera, was doing for a while. It was like a 2-1-1, but with the 6 Hellions as Hellbats, and so it was not like a really devastating amount of units, but a surprising amount of anti-ling, that's for sure. But this is, first of all, not finding drones. Not finding drones. So we'll defend that. But then second of all, it is actually just more of that using them as the macro. The not Widowmines, the not tanks, but the Hellbats. Which I don't really like, but I'm seeing it work, so it doesn't really matter what I like or not. Again, apparently having some type of issue. They both have some type of issue. Scarlett was the first to pause last game, but then GuMiHo agreed that he had the same problem, so I don't know what's going on there. I actually can't possibly think of it. So something that would affect both of the players like an equal amount when one of them is playing from their home server. You know, if Scarlett was in Korea, which she's not, and then they're both playing, they're forced to play in North America for some stupid reason, then I'd be like, oh, well, they're both having the same problem. But that's not what happens. If they were both in Korea, they'd just be playing on the Korean server. Maybe that was something totally different. Unfortunately for Scarlett, gonna still have to cancel that hatchery. Just a handful of Marines with stim, undefended. Do manage to kill a growing hatchery, so that was like 80% done, wasn't it? That's a wee bit painful. 5th base does come down, making it look like it's no problem. No worries. Meant to do that. Meant to build both at the same time. Armory is coming down, obviously not just for Hellbats, but also because the 1-1 upgrades are almost done for GuMiHo. Scarlett's only just started her own 1-1, actually really quite getting fast to Hydras, so getting some really well-timed Baneling speed that's already going to be done, but then getting to Hydras already with their range over halfway upgraded. GuMiHo's Hellbats, they're going to roasty toast Lings, they're going to soak up Banelings, and they are going to soak up Hydra damage, but I do wonder about their helpfulness for this particular battle. If the Banelings aren't ready, well then, well, that's already always good news. But the Banelings are being formed. So many freaking queens. Jesus, they have so many transfuses. They're actually just rushing on top of the Hive, just trying to get the Hellbats involved in the actual fight, but as the Banelings form, that becomes quickly a bad idea. And GuMiHo trying to just jump on the units he could see to get some damage done. Wasn't super successful, I don't think. 3 Hydras actually isn't too bad. They are more expensive. The more important thing is that the retreat was available, despite how much anti-air there was for the Zerg. 2-2 starts up pretty quickly there for GuMiHo. Going to continue with an upgrade lead, and now is just going on to some heavy bio emphasis. 3 more barracks coming up first. 2nd factory at a later date. It's the style of play that he did versus Cham, but that game is already well in favor of GuMiHo. This one is still pretty even. Scarlett does get supply blocked and is now going to have 2 different sides to worry about, but she's a pro. It usually deals with it. Widowmine's not going to pop off there. GuMiHo's 4th base being gotten on location seems a little gutsy, but it does make sense with the way the game has gone. And the tempo which has been set, which is that GuMiHo is the one aggressing, and Scarlett is not going for any type of mid-game attack. I mean, I'm certain there are opportunities as Zerg player when you see that there is one to go ahead and aggress, but generally that Ling Baneling Hydra is kind of just biding its time until it is maxed out and getting a really, really good fight, one in which it overwhelms and can jump forward after that. So yeah, a couple of Lings would have stopped this, but she was under a lot of pressure. So GuMiHo playing some good macro game this time around. I didn't notice any macro mistakes this time anyway. Widowmines being transferred into, obviously I like more. I just like the way that it forces the Zerg player to play around them, because that's what I would say is the biggest weakness of the Hellbats, is that it plays very similar to the rest of the bio. So the Zerg player kind of just has a checklist, and that checklist is one thing. Do I have enough Banelings or don't I? Whereas even if you have enough Banelings against this army, that one Widowmine is always something for the Zerg player to go, well, hold on. Let me take this cautiously. Scarlett's split seems to be good. She is maxed out. So she have an infestation pit? Yeah, so we are going to moving on to that Hive. We got ourselves a solid TvZ macro game between the two for game number 3 on Site Delta. 3-3 will be starting up soon for GuMiHo. At least that +3 attack first and foremost, always the most important. Big drop coming in on the right side. Scarlett preparing her natural for the defense. Looks to be fine, honestly. This isn't really all that big of a drop. It's also not really being paid attention to anymore as GuMiHo is focusing on the left side, realizing there's a chance here actually with the superior upgrades and Medivac still healing to take down the Lings, Banelings, and perhaps the Hydras, but more Banelings rolling on in here. Get past those Hydras, Jesus, is going to force those Marauders away. GuMiHo might have taken a fair resource trade there, but did not overwhelm like he was hoping, and the drop in the main does not unload, but it does survive, which is actually more than I thought was going to happen. More army on the Terran side came through. Banelings do connect as GuMiHo was caught slipping, but that might still be a good enough army from the Terran. Marauders actually able to soak up something, right, compared to just a pure Marine ball. It is going to be cleaned up. The Medivacs ran out of juice, and attention was put back onto the drop that has now hit the 5th base. It took the whole world trip, man, from the 4th to the natural to the main to the 5th. And it is trying to be quite the bother. 7 drones have gone down. More Lings going down to it as well as they are not taking the most ideal fight. And GuMiHo continues to rally to the middle of the map, but he is woefully low on those Medivacs. 4 of them now just kind of in limbo. Caught in a rock and a hard place. Would love to be helping out this army more so, but while this army can't jump forward anymore, and maybe it still probably shouldn't be on creep, it does take the time to clear up creep, so that's better than nothing, and better than getting surrounded. Scarlett not feeling like she had an opportunity to do so, especially because you don't know what's following that up. You don't know if that was actually the entire army on Medivac list, or the reinforcements were there or what. Now the reinforcements are here with at least a couple of Medivacs, and you can see that Scarlett can't really overwhelm that at this point. Upgrades, almost done. I was wondering if GuMiHo ever started his +3 armor. He did not. That +3 attack is about 90%. Scarlett grabbed her Hive, is getting +3 Carapace, +2 Missile. No Adrenal Glands as of yet. Can't afford it on the gas. Trying to remax over and over and over again as GuMiHo continues to pile on the pressure. Finally getting a good fight on the left, but creep spread has to be reestablished. She's got 6 Queens, which seem to be a majority on the front line. So we can see that Scarlett is having maybe a bit of a larva problem. No, actually 20 plus larva, now all using it at once. There we go. As at least her hatchery count is good. So 7 hatcheries in total to give larva. Make that 6 as this one does go down. Scarlett was nowhere close to defending that one. And you do just kind of have to accept that loss. The good news is Scarlett can triple expand still with the bank that she does have, but the Banelings clouding into the Marauders wall is always unideal. Resources lost obviously favoring the Terran by about 4,000 or 5,000 almost actually as this fight continues. More reinforcements from GuMiHo coming in to take care of the rest of the fight as well, and Scarlett has to regroup and get everything on the front lines once again. As GuMiHo has stopped trying to attack the far left of the map, focusing all of his aggression on this 4th or 3rd, whatever it was. No Banelings that I can see. No Infestors out as of yet. It is pure Hydra versus pure Marine Marauder, and the Hydras do not like that. Oh, poor Hydras. Getting beat-bopped in the first game, getting beat-bopped in the 3rd. The Lings now piling 4th. They're actually quite difficult for pure Marauder to clean up, but look how many Hydras went down. I mean, Hydras in total. Their deaths at 55 in this game. So many from this particular fight. And Scarlett just was forced to take a stand when she was not prepared. GG. It is funny, you know, GuMiHo, I'll point out his little macro mistakes, and I'll even come up with a couple of excuses for him, like the European server when he was facing a laser and in the time. More importantly, he was playing at, 4 in the morning. And, I'll be like, well, that happens. And then I'll see it in this series, and I'll be like, oh, this is something that you can see happen more with GuMiHo than some of the other professional Terrans. And maybe you worry a little bit, because you see it. He's not playing his A game. He can't play a fast game. And then he just comes out with these super fast styles and plays them as well as a Bjorn could, You're like, oh, never mind. In the top right of Solaris, yet again, down a game. She is Scarlett. In the bottom left, as the blue Terran, he is GuMiHo. This is the last qualifier for Katowice, but it is not the last chance for these players. They are in the upper bracket. So if Scarlett were to fall in this game, she would fall down to the lower bracket to face, I believe, Special in another qualifying match. So Special defeated Creator. That's quite sad news for Creator. Cham defeated DRG. Great performance from Cham. Sad for DRG. And they are waiting for their next chance. Bunny Trigger happening on the other side of this bracket, in the upper bracket, being cast on Roddy's stream. Plus a bunch of others, I'm just not sure which ones. So, there's a chance that both these players still make it through if that's who you're cheering for. Still a chance that Bunny and Trigger both make it through if that's who you're cheering for. We've actually had not a lot of Koreans. In fact, no Korean made it through the European Open qualifier and closed qualifier. So we are, you know, ever inching our way past the point of where Koreans dominated every single server qualifier given to them. The regional representatives are getting the slots, but it was very close. Creator actually, not a Creator Classic, I believe. Actually getting very close and just not quite. Same for the open bracket yesterday. He got defeated by DRG. But it could change here. GuMiHo, one map away from qualifying. Bunny currently having trouble against Trigger, actually. And we'll see what happens a little lower. Yeah, obviously Asia is different. Asia did have a lot of Koreans win. I think that was won maybe by all Koreans, actually. There is also some powerful Chinese and Taiwanese players, but I'm not sure any of them won. I could go check, because we have a non-proxy opener and non-cheese opener from Scarlett, too. In fact, it was a command center first. Seeing both orbitals finish is the hint there when you're not paying attention. Asia and Korea had Firefly. Yeah, okay, there you go. Firefly. Qualify over SOS. And Cyan qualify over DRG. So yeah. Two Chinese representatives from the Asia server. Oliveira, for those wondering, is already seated into Katowice. Alright, so command center first into double factory play. GuMiHo gonna get a little spicy, more so in the mid game. Where oh no! Clearly, you want to get that scout. GuMiHo not thinking a Ling would just manage to trespass into the main. And now that mid game plan that I was about to applaud is kind of totally, utterly destroyed. It's like, of course, you still get the factories. You don't cancel it, but it is super, super awkward. I was going to applaud it because I was going to say that this has not been something GuMiHo has done yet, right? He got the kind of early game aggression, I guess, started with that single racks in the first game, but then it did go into some reactored cyclones, so it was pressure, but it wasn't quite dedicated. And then we had the 3 racks, obviously, and then last game we had a 3cc. This was one of the bigger emphasis on a lot of units in the kind of early to mid stage, and it could have been effective. Scarlett could have been caught off guard in an even bigger way than she was in the first game, where she kind of took a couple of battles that were a little too bad for her. She could have been caught off even in a game-ending way with two facts, Blue Flame or 2-fact Hemlian Cyclone, whatever one it was going to be. But GuMiHo, realizing that the jig's kind of up, is just going to turn this into the mech. He was going to turn it into anyway, but if you're going to be scouted, you'd rather have your 3cc scouted and just getting that economy set up anyway. It's coming down now. It's almost done, but Scarlett's, knowing that she also is kind of defended just by the scouts, been pumping out drones, getting their third. Lair's on the way. Roachborn was gotten. She now realizes the composition that she will be up against. There's a small chance that Terran players will move on to Bio even after a 2-fact opener. But, I mean, I feel like it's actually kind of dependent on the day, whether or not they do, honestly. GuMiHo does like Mech, and he won a game with Mech, so that probably pushes it to, yeah, it's going to be Mech, but I think we've seen GuMiHo even try and do a little surprise tactic. Oh, just kidding, not going to do it. We've seen Special do it. We've seen Oliveira do it. Yeah. But no, it's definitely Mech. And, you know, the easy presumption is, yes, it is actually Mech. She'll saw timing on the 3rd gas. which also would have been the 4th ship, or a little closer. So 1-1 upgrades on the way, double armory, as it turns into more of a macro focus. Scarlett is just sticking on the roaches, does not have Ling speed, does not have banelings. It'll be Roach Ravager into maybe a more aggressive Hive. Because, I mean, you do want something that helps cut the mobility of the inevitable macro mech, battle mech, there we go, battle mech player. So whether that's Ling surrounds, fungals, or Vipers, you know, all 3 ideally, I suppose, but you gotta have at least something usually. The roaches are great at standing on the high ground or standing in superior numbers, standing their grounds, but sometimes it gets a little frustrating to be the one led by the nose. But if you are being led by the nose, if you're following the order of the opposing player, you best be doing it while having some macro underway, and so the Infestation Pit is underway. Could be getting fungals first, absolutely getting fungals first, because I do really believe that there is a chance for GuMiHo to really get damage done if there's no stopper. There's no mobility stopper, no mobility threat. And that's a little too much, I think, to give to the mech player. But then we could have a swift transition into Hive, like I've been saying. Because this technology's coming down pretty quickly. Obviously, no player even close to max. Nothing having really happened in this game except the scout. And so we could have that expedited game into Hive and, you know, 4 bases for the Terran. And over into tanks, maybe even a little bit faster, depending on how GuMiHo wants to play this. Still primarily on the battle mech, but 1 or 2 tanks defensively to ensure your defense is set up if they are literally just maxing on Roach Ravager is always nice. That scan just revealed the Infestors, which pushes it a little bit more to, okay, the Zerg player is trying to survive and trying to macro, not going to try and overwhelm me. And then you could use the tanks, obviously still defensively, just leave them back at home. Or you could try and anchor some of these angles. That does take away the mobility of the Cyclone, where it's not beep-bopping left and right, but rather just kind of choosing, let's say, this zone and sieging up. But it is a different way that Zerg then has to approach the engagement. And just because they have Infestors doesn't mean that they can't try and engage upon you. I just think that the tank will ensure that this will not be victorious for Scarlett. Yeah, seriously, that one lone tank is going to add so much. Without the tank, the problem is that the Cyclones have so little room to maneuver backwards. So, well, the tank's gone. Fungal also on top of some of the army. Doesn't quite get the Raven, which also grabs an anti-armor missile, which is absolutely impactful. And Scarlett, I think, is well within her rights to be a bit of a bully right now. Creeps so advanced forward, army on the front lines, but yeah, actually breaking the Terran. Not gonna happen. Gonna try her luck over on that 4th base, and there is no defense there, not even a sensor tower. So planetary not done, no tanks, army completely out of position, and GuMiHo just did not realize what was going down here. Ravagers aplenty, could actually go after the planetary, decide to use the corrosive piles on the SCVs. I mean, if the SCV's got a mass repair, that planetary holds, so kind of the better decision to try and get that. The Cyclones, when they are alerted, are quick, so they will go now and even chase down these Ravagers. Scarlett's army went to go respond to some harassment and left those poor guys alone. Why? GuMiHo, I don't know if he scouted a Spire, but he is actually building Thors already, and that's really important that he did that. Talk about it in a second, because a big fungal just went through with the Wombo combo, Corrosive Bile. That was devastating to GuMiHo's supply. So many Ravagers are available. Another Wombo combo. A couple more tanks are involved in this particular fight, but that is still a lot of Ravagers left over. More reinforcements could be coming in as well. Scarlett now trying to flood with Lings, but it is not going to be fast enough to get the overwhelming amount. GuMiHo will hold strong on 4 bases for now, but there is a Greater Spire on the way. And so GuMiHo going into Thors is obviously very necessary for that particular problem, but also, if he doesn't know about it, that is actually a change up on his style. I think perhaps realizing that he has lost the ability to really be the bully with battle mechs, so already moving over into tanks as fast as he did was correct, but then not staying a particularly long time on only tanks is also in this game very correct. Now, eventually going into more Thors than anything else is just correct kind of in general, because upgraded Thors are good, but it can sometimes not be the ticket if you are against someone who is remaxing over and over again on Ling, Roach, Ravager. But as I say that, the Ravagers are getting decimated. The Hellions helping to bully forward here is the Ravagers just a little too soft. And GuMiHo took the opportunity when he found it to push back. Scarlett does have a huge bank, though, and even after she rebuilds her roaches, still has a lot of bank, although not so much in gas, which is what she actually needs. Rich Vespian Geyser is taken, but not fully saturated, and the rest of the gases are up. It's just such a heavy gas reinvestment. The first one into just the Ravagers to begin with was already quite big. That was 26 Ravagers. 32 in total, so that is a lot of gas. The Thors being ferried. I really do love this. So that's what GuMiHo wanted to do, is add in some fairy Thors. I love that he does this. He was one of the first ones to really, I guess, perfect a opener that I loved for a little while there, which was the double Thor drop. Opener from Mech. And then just to add them in for a little bit more chase, as you can see, he was thinking about maybe dropping on some of these units to help them be as mobile as the rest of the army. And they are at least something in case they are going for very surprise Brood Lords. I really like that addition from GuMiHo. But he's also just kind of running with momentum that he built up after taking care of so many Ravagers. Scarlett, forced to remax on Roaches first and foremost, does not have the most ideal army against an upgraded Mech. 2-2 has been done for a very long time. No move over onto the third upgrade. But I guess it's because GuMiHo is not mining as well as you would hope. Also has Rich Vespian Geyser, but doesn't have it saturated. The Broodlords will make an appearance, realizing that there's only 2 Thors, and they will be able to focus fire them down. The Cyclone's only able to get a limited amount of lock-ons, and GuMiHo has found himself a little too overly aggressive. Was doing a great job bullying the Roach Ravager. But then when the reinforcements came in, of course, faster for the Zerg and on the defensive, and the Broodlords came in to add the Broodlings, that was a little bit too much. GuMiHo, still not mining from his third base, does have a fifth, and that is perhaps going to save his economy as he is going to try and take the fight on the front line. Cyclones is all he has, will take on the Roach Ravager, but what about the Broodlords? There aren't that many of them, but they are the perfect garnish to this Zerg army. So bothersome to deal with. The Thors of GuMiHo finally pop out, a couple of Vikings as well, and that's literally all you need. No Fungals, no Infested Terrans, thank you patches, no Queens on the front lines, and this might be good enough for GuMiHo to hold. At 150 supply, it is barely good enough for a Mech player against the maxing out Zerg, and once again, Scarlett might be now her turn in this tug-of-war to over-aggress, but she chooses wisely to back away at this particular moment, perhaps remembering what happened last time. GuMiHo gets a chance to breathe, but it's not a very big breath, not a very deep one. Still doesn't have those upgrades on the way, still doesn't have a maxed out army, and still is struggling on the gases. This third doesn't really need the minerals mining so much as it needs some mules on gas geysers, which that patch never went through. And now the Rich Vespian Geyser is under trouble, so the planetary, it will help defend, and that is good, but the gas is really, really necessary for GuMiHo. Scarlett is trying to get a lot of upgrades at this point. She has been on a superior economy, 96 drones, and it's only been the severe loss of life that has got her sweating. Now that she is comfortable, back on the maxed out situation, back on the upgrades, back on the technology, she has such a bigger playground than GuMiHo does. GuMiHo really, really needs to get maxed out and settle again on 5 base economy. 10 gases, or 9, I suppose, but Rich Vespian. Then it's back to being a very difficult game to call, because it is the stubborn Mech Terran player versus the relentless Zerg player. But right now, Scarlett's supply and overall position is very dangerous looking. She might be tying up this series. Hellion Run-By stopped short of even hitting the drones right there, and that was about 800 minerals down. But I love this! God, I love GuMiHo's Mech so much. The 2 Thors going for their harassment. Yeah! They do kill a hatchery, but they're now not on the front lines, or the back lines, I should say. Defending back at home is what I mean. They are literally on the front lines. They are the aggressive Thors. And they are winning. And I love when this happens. God, the queens are like, wait, what? Stop. No. The drones pulled away. Planetary, though. Oh, that is destroyed. GuMiHo, realizing there wasn't even much of a chance to try and salvage that situation, just pulls the SEVs away. Has a replacement 5th on the way, but he really needs a 6th, so that's still not looking great. GuMiHo supply blocked, but the army supply is still good. Hellbat drops on top of the army, too. Classic move. Not just getting the Hellbats up and close and friendly, but also trying to go for a bit of a surround right there. However, finally, that maneuver does kind of expend itself, and now it's the Fungals coming in, and just the frank remax of the Zerg that is most powerful. GuMiHo's army supply, if it was tank-based, I would actually say has a good chance to still push forward, but with the Cyclone Thor needing to gain momentum and being stopped at every single turn, it does look like Scarlett will be tying up the series 2-2. Tied up 2-2 in this winner's match, best of 5 in the top rights of Alcyone. It is GuMiHo. On the bottom left, we do have Scarlett. Scarlett getting a ling in the last game to scout the intended 2 factory. Nipping it in the bud and making GuMiHo's entire plan just a little more awkward. I wouldn't say it entirely unraveled, but it was like that piece of string that started to appear on your clothing, and you're like, well, if I pick at it, it's gonna get worse. So you kind of just admit defeat a little bit and let it stay there and go into your 3rd CC and play your mech game, but it's always there. It's always bothering you. And the rest of the game could have been evened up. They were really throwing some haymakers at each other. Both caught in some overly aggressive scenarios. Scarlett's loss of that 26 Ravager army, or however much it was really painful because, you know, that's a faster to gain momentum type of mech play than a tank-based mech play. So if you do misjudge a situation and there's still enough Cyclones and Hellions and whatever else they have to attack into you, then it's not gonna, you know, wait to siege chop forward politely and slowly. It's gonna just jump on you, and that's what happened. She lost her Rich Thespian Geyser at that point, but still had the ability to max out. Still had such a strong economy and so many bases, and there was a real lack of harassment from GuMiHo that game that made Scarlett able to push through and eventually really just be in the driver's seat. Eventually, it was quite obvious that she was bound to win, just ignoring any, again, super big losses of life. So, now we get to game number 5. GuMiHo had 1 mech game workout in game number 1, but then the entire plan worked out a little bit better. The Proxy single racks with the Reaper into the Cyclones, getting a pretty good fight into more Cyclones, continuing. And then that was just a really well-executed game where Scarlett was always on the back foot. Last game was kind of the opposite, just in terms of, I guess, mental warfare, where it wasn't a lot of action that determined the first 7 minutes of the game and how good that was going. It was the scout into the repositioning of your ideal game, I guess, in your own brain. So for GuMiHo, it was like, yeah, just getting on, moving on. And that's always going to create a little more awkward of a start. In effect, at least the mid game. When it came to minute 13, 14, 15, it didn't so much have to do with that start as it did with just some of the battles not going well. And again, that lack of harassment, which GuMiHo did attempt at least once or twice, but was cut short. And then otherwise was just so much on the defensive. You know, couldn't really find an opportunity. So now the question is, will GuMiHo mech again? 1 win, 1 loss, very different games, entirely different maps as well, but what are you thinking there? GuMiHo also has displayed some very good macro on the bio front, the 8 racks emphasis, not a 8 racks all in, but just 4 base 8 racks, I guess we'll call it, single factory. He's also looked pretty good there, but I don't know. I don't know what I would be thinking as GuMiHo and whether or not Scarlett would be weaker against X or Y. Because I don't know how GuMiHo thinks. But I will say that we are, as a community, kind of aware that Scarlett is at least more vocal about some of the things that do frustrate her. Now, again, that sometimes turns into a trap where she'll be like, I hate adepts, and then she'll just do brilliantly against adepts, and it's like, well, I tricked you, almost, but she actually does not like adepts. So, there's that, but if you are going to think about frustrating a Zerg player, I think most Zerg players, if not all of them, would agree that mech is just more obnoxious. And not just the turtle mech that's frustrating to defeat, but even the battle mech. So, could be something to think of, but it is going to be Stim. It is going to be bio from GuMiHo. And it probably will be that emphasis on the bio and delay on the second factory. The Scarlett's got to prepare for that. She's got a 2 evolution chamber set up. There we go. He was building 1 for a while, but yeah, there's the second one. And GuMiHo is going into that 2-on-1 follow-up now in, what, game 3? Which he won. There was the Hellbat production that lasted for quite some time. It looks like this is different because only 4 Hellions were produced instead of 6, I believe. No. I think it was 4 and then the other reactor. Okay, so this still could be a little bit more of the Hellbat emphasis. We shall see. Just doing some quick production math in my head. No, that's 5 barracks. We're good. So totally normal. 3cc build from GuMiHo. And 30cc is on location. So much creep for Scarlett. Yeah, that's one really great thing about that first game, too. Was that even though her creep was still pretty good, it did eventually get cut short of the... like, not even the halfway mark. It was way shorter than that. It was cut pretty short at some point. But it kind of started a little bit slower, too. Or even a lot slower. Because she did lose the queens to the Cyclones. Single Marine drop was also successful in killing the 4th hatch, or canceling the 4th hatch, which is still really good, because the 4th hatch was 70-80% done. Gonna be looking for the same result. It is, almost the exact same build, I'm pretty sure, and GuMiHo's hoping to find some success again here. After all, he has found success in both Mech and Bio, both seem totally viable against Scarlett. She showed weaknesses to both. What really kicked her in the butt of the Bio game was eventually finding herself up against the main army of the Terran, Thon's Banelings. And that is never a good place to be against a Bio player. But even more so, I guess, she was actually Thon's Lings. It was literally her pure Hydra army up against the pure Bio army of the Terran, which... depending on the sizes, I think can kind of go different ways, or maybe the medevac healing kind of different ways, but in that scenario, it would absolutely win away the Bio player. So gonna basically be avoiding that once again, but here's the Halberd attack that's GuMiHo mixed in, and this one's actually getting right on top of the drone line, right on top of the Banelings as well. That is a huge problem. Does she have any more? 3 more coming in, 3 at a time is actually microable against, but it looks like GuMiHo ready for that potential surround, or was he? All right, it was actually pulling back. I thought that GuMiHo was pulling back because he was getting ready to lift, but there was only one medevac, so I guess that was a problem. But seeing the Banelings roll in like that, there could have been a chance for them to shoot down the 3 Banelings and 3 Banelings, and I presumed GuMiHo was actually backing away because he expected the surround. Absolutely not the case. Thought that might be the only army coming in from one direction, so was preparing to split. And then the surround came in, and he was pretty screwed. So that was not the moment that GuMiHo was hoping, because he did dive. That was a, oh god, can I win the game? Can I win the game? Can I do it right here and now? And then you realized that the Zerg player's not as under-defended as you were hoping they were. So a little whoops-a-daisy on the side of GuMiHo that will interfere with the follow-up momentum build. That was really, I think, more effective in that 3rd game. If it was the 2nd or 3rd, I don't remember, but you get, yeah, whatever one it was. Pretty sure it was the 3rd. That 2nd one was the 3 racks, that's right. Yeah, that was awkward. So 4cc on the way for GuMiHo. Those additional racks coming down, again, delaying a 2nd factory significantly, building up a far heavier Marauder counts, as well as general Bio. And that heavy Marauder count can also complicate matters for the Zerg player, because suddenly the Baneling crashing into the heart of the army, as we saw in Game 3, isn't the end-all be-all of the fights, as it is versus 20 Marines. So that also changes the way that they play against it. There's a little more sticking power, staying power to the Marauder Bio, I guess. Good Marine placement there, so the Lings will not find any more damage. Both sides upgraded evenly, but ooh, speaking of some Baneling connections, looks like there was one. Caught the tail end of it. GuMiHo forced to back away right before killing that 4th hatch, but oh, it is so damn low that seems inevitable, and Scarlett moves away for 1 second. She looks away from 1 second. The toddlers run out of the house and into someone else's house. The hatchery goes down, instantly replaced, of course, but a pretty big delay on mining. Scarlett has 80 drones that I don't believe are efficiently mining at this point once they transfer. Oh, they're still mining. They're so long distance mining, so yeah, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't, but still, with 2 hatcheries ideally on the way up, I thought she was getting that gold base. She was not. So that would be fixed pretty quickly, but once again, a cancel on that 5th, and still no gold base 6th. Hatcheries seem to be in good enough number with some injects happening that she doesn't have a larva problem, and still has actually quite the supply. GuMiHo has given up some chunks of army to go for some of these base kills, these economy damages, which, you know, suddenly that means they have a stronger army. You do have to worry about the counterattack. Off of creep seems a little less viable for a Zerg player, but finding GuMiHo's medevacless army is a big boon for Scarlett. she actually was unable to get the pounce on this same army, this same forward move out from GuMiHo. That was one that cleared up the creep and was able to be reinforced. But this time around, her aggressive posturing has actually rewarded her by catching that off guard. Now also hitting the planetary, trying to hit it in 2 places at once. And GuMiHo is having trouble on both sides. That planetary will barely hold. But will this army 2-2 over 1-2? A couple of Woodamines helping out, and it looks like maybe GuMiHo will barely be able to live another day. But the Lings ransacked the SEV lines. 28 SEVs going down, and GuMiHo own only 4 bases. I mean, 4 is something to replace those SEVs with, but if it was 5 plus 2 extra orbitals, it'd be a very different scenario. Instead, GuMiHo takes all that damage to his economy. A sufficient shred in the army, I would say, from Scarlett too. So GuMiHo's own counterattack back, and this back and forth that we have here is not going to be as devastating, not unless it catches Scarlett off guard as far as its placement. 2 drops are heading over to the right side unseen, so that gold base hatchery is not going to happen. But the attack on the left is prepared for. Nice sniping there from GuMiHo, though. Takes down most of the banelings of the defense, but is not confident to continue on forward. Nonetheless, a good distraction. The gold base is canceled, and GuMiHo does save the army as that Zerg was looking to get another surround. And he is going to try and micro his little heart out here to try and keep momentum, as Scarlett needs to be basically forced to stay on her side of the map for GuMiHo to recover back at home. He is back up to 60 SCVs, totally fine, especially with the main and natural starting to mine out. But then that's the worry here. GuMiHo does not have a 5th on the way. It does have 3-3 about to finish, but there's so many banelings. Only 2 Woodamines to call for. And they will still be locked and loaded, but then a little too far forward right there. Very, very careful. If GuMiHo ever takes even a somewhat bad fight, that could be another green light for Scarlett to move across the map and potentially win this 5th game. That would be GuMiHo's 3rd attempt to win through the upper bracket closed qualifier match, and it would be another failure. So that would be a extra painful sting for him if that ends up happening. I think Scarlett maybe is... I don't know if she's only played North America, but I don't think she's played all 3 like GuMiHo. Infestation pits are on the way, which is just a mistake, but point is she is looking to get towards that high. GuMiHo's 3-3, of course, one of the best things that he has right now. 3-3 and about a 20 army supply lead. That is a fine place to be, but only if the fight goes well. That is a lot of Zerg coming in on one direction, though. Any of these Woodamines pop off, and that could be game over for Scarlett. Finally, a little bit more of a concave coming in for GuMiHo, too, as he pulled away and away and away and away and away. But still, so much of the Zerg horde is here. GuMiHo's fight, not the devastating win that he's looking for. For Scarlett, it's a little sketch whenever you start to run out of banelings, but she apparently never did. She always had reinforcing banelings. Now a couple of infestors on the way too. That kind of extra ensures her ability to survive, if not straight up take a good fight. Oh, GuMiHo not able to afford a 5th. Actually kind of close to it. If that fight didn't happen, he would have started banking, but the fight did happen and was first and foremost replacing the army. So not going to be able to afford a 5th, but maybe if the game continues to kind of settle to a certain extent. Currently, the orbital of the main is heading over to the gold, a very vulnerable point, but Scarlett has not gotten on GuMiHo's side of the map in quite a few minutes. No Ling run bys have happened, so that might actually end up mining. Caught in a little bit of a weird scenario here on the right side, but GuMiHo able to save the Marines. That is clearly not all of GuMiHo's army, so Scarlett's got some army elsewhere looking for this army in the middle of the map. Is GuMiHo paying attention? The fungal is looking, and the stim has to happen just to run away from it. Is going to stand and fight to a certain degree because he's also paying attention to the right side, which might be winning for GuMiHo there, thanks to the 3-3. Marines also on the far left, taking down this hatchery once again. That thing is just doomed. It is not going to mine for any substantial amount of time. 12 drones have gone down. Wouldn't mind spotting out where the army is, catching some of the infestors, and GuMiHo is clawing his way back into the game. The fact is, Scarlett has been locked on Lair Tech for quite some time, and that is especially brutal up against a mass bio 3-3 player. Finally on her own advanced technology, not superior, with a couple of infestors and 3-3 started, but nothing else besides that. More reinforcements coming in here for the Terran. GuMiHo actually wants to take this fight, needs the medevacs to actually survive though too, and that could be the problem. The medevac's starting to get low on juice. A fungal comes through to help out, to no Lings on the front line. Once again, Scarlett only on the Hydra defense might be the main problem, just like her loss in Game 3. GuMiHo finds the stand to take, and Scarlett now is in a lot of trouble. Coming through with the rest of her reinforcements might be too little, too late, and GuMiHo might have finally done it here. His 3rd attempt to get to IEM Katowice through all of the open, all of the closed, might finally be a victory in North America. Scarlett is going to scramble enough defense together to hold on for now, but supplies may be telling the tale. Scarlett cannot afford enough larva. That is her biggest problem. All of her queens have gone down. They're not injecting. The hatcheries have been sniped, and that has caught up to the North American Zerg. If she had 2,000 extra minerals of blings and hydras on here, this would be a no-brainer. This would have been a defense on that high ground of the hatchery. Instead, it is GuMiHo up 40 supply, still with superior upgrades, getting the medevac upgrade too, which I think is an excellent addition more than anything else in this game. And GuMiHo is now perhaps looking to win this game. But as things slow down, Scarlett has got some more time to use the larva she is getting to finally use that bank. And then it goes to as many banelings as she can afford, as many infestors, and then the rest into pure ling. She's got a chance to make the comeback happen, but it's got to be pristine Zerg play from here on out. GuMiHo is running low on minerals even still. Again, picking up his third base this time to get another base mining. But as long as it doesn't take a nasty fungal to the face, the supply is good enough for GuMiHo to win. Still has superior upgrades as well. A little bit of a surround with a couple of fungals coming in is the best chance for Scarlett to actually win this fight. Another brutal fungal and more lings coming in. And Scarlett actually will push this back. Not enough healing there as Scarlett managed to take the supply lead, at least momentarily. Evens up the army supply. And this game is apparently not over. Not quite yet. GuMiHo still has certainly enough minerals to reinforce with a lot of Marines, and that's what's coming forward here. Do we have any more banelings? Not a whole lot. In fact, 0. 4 being made. 3-3 finally finishing. Infestors back in the front lines, but without the actual fungals to help out. Very dangerous game now being played. It is on a knife's edge. If GuMiHo messes up against a fungal, if he lets all of these Marines get hit by a baneling, then he will have a counterattack on his hands when his only bases are orbitals. He would be overrun on his economy, so he is actually still in a very precarious position. Widowmine's again helping out at least with a little bit of scouting. It looks like GuMiHo finally managed to find the change under the couch cushion to actually grab a new command center. Infestors with Burrow now in play could be absolutely huge. Scarlett refusing to back down in Game 5. And here comes that pop-up fungal. Beautiful stuff. GuMiHo might still be able to take a decent trade as far as this is concerned, but it's not the one he wanted. Back on the left side of the map, yet again, this hatchery under fire, trying to be protected. Scarlett only left with hydras, but this time, the superior number of units, and GuMiHo is the one that has to pull back into whatever reinforcements he has, which is not looking like a very healthy amount. More medevacs necessary. More lings necessary, though, too, as the Marauders are outlasting a little bit. No longer is it 3-3 versus 2-2, and I think that has played a huge part in the last 2 minutes of this game. This is actually a lot of the reasons why GuMiHo has not barely been winning or trading out as efficiently in these last 2 minutes of battles. GuMiHo needs to regroup and take better judgment fights now that he's realized possibly 1, investors with Burrow. Shit, that's scary. And 2, the upgrades have evened up. That is big news for Scarlett, who's also going for the sustained play, right? The mostly Hydro play. It's very sustained damage, so you got to be in it for the fight in the long haul. One medevac going over to the right side, trying to stop Scarlett from trying to take over the map once again. Scarlett ditto on GuMiHo's side of the map. That planetary not going to happen thanks to the run-by with the lings. GuMiHo taking a stand in the middle of the map might be a bad idea, might be a terrible idea, in fact. As the fungal came through, the banelings get the connections, and GuMiHo's supply once again dipping down. If he evacuates from the middle of the map, then again, his bases are so vulnerable. Bases that he absolutely still needs. GuMiHo did manage to successfully snipe a hatchery, but the left one is up and running. GuMiHo has not planted his command center back down, blocked out by a single ling and a changeling, actually, and that is burning. GuMiHo's attention needs to now go directly over to the left side to get that planetary up and running, because that could be his jumping off point. If he could jump off that planetary with reinforcements into Scarlett's base, those are both the bases they 100% need. And bouncing off a planetary so that you can fall back to it is the magic of Terran a lot of the time. Or you can just get a snipe, and that's far easier, I guess. But if he can get the hatchery snipe and get out of there after also killing an infestor, which so far is successful, and get this planetary up and running, then that would be the ticket to win. But that's the problem. The medevac boost is now out. The SCV is having to evacuate. The command center desperately running away on orange health, will survive, and we have ourselves a little bit of an SCV pool. Oh, which actually is so helpful. Again, in sustained damage battles, SCV pools are amazing. It's when they're up against banelings, which are that explosive splash that it's like, why even bother? That scan just revealed a rather subpar Zerg army, not a lot of Banelings, and so much more bio. GuMiHo once again on the precipice of winning this game number 5. It seems like it's happened multiple times, but this might actually finally be truly it. Scarlett evacuating her drones from her bases, trying to get the right side at the same time, also getting Lings on the right side as GuMiHo does finally have to give up those 2 orbital commands, but I think they've done it. They've mined long enough. They've given GuMiHo enough reinforcements to have now a 50, almost 60 army supply lead, and Scarlett has not a thing up her sleeve. No more infestors after that last fungal. No ultras, no broodlords, no spellcasters, no 2,000 mineral bank that eventually can come back into fruition. No, it is 21 minutes on Alcyone, and it is gonna go to GuMiHo. Katowice now well within his right to visits, and that is it. GuMiHo! Woo! He does it! I know many of you will be cheering for Scarlett, but I gotta say, after watching so many GuMiHo games, I'm glad to see him finally make it through. Scarlett has a chance in the lower brackets up against, as I said, I believe, Special.